How I overcame all my fears and self-doubt to grow my six-figure business, my complete playbook. So hi everybody, right? So today I want to share with you exactly how I overcame all the sources of my fears, my anxiety, my self-doubt when it comes to quitting my job all the way to building my six-figure business. If you ever struggle with things like self-doubt, right, anxiety, right, imposter syndrome, low confidence, a concern about whether you will even succeed, right, whether it's in your career, your business, your life, this is really for you. So hi everybody, so Mark Teo here. So what we do is we help entrepreneurs to grow and to build a lucrative lifestyle business with proven systems and mentorships. I do these videos because I want to share my journey after learning about more than $100,000 worth of courses and mentorship, right? And right, also growing my entire business to six figures. I want to share with you all my entire journey, so you don't have to repeat the mistakes, right? And hey, right, in the future, if you do want to work with me in the long term, right, that would be great. And why I find today's video to be so important for me to share, not even just with all of you, but even my private clients, even my close personal friends, right? It's because of something happened in 2022. What happened was me together with a couple of friends, we actually attended this program called Tony Robbins Business Mastery Program together, and people paid about USD $10,000 to join that program. And in Singapore, right, because the event was held in the US, right, in a virtual, it was held from about 10 p.m. Singapore time all the way to about 10 a.m. right in the morning, and we spent about 5 full days, right, immersed in the program. And it sounds, some people call it like a bit of a waste of time, but I'll share with you the biggest lesson I learned over there. Because in just the first 1 to 2 days alone, right, we didn't learn any new single tactic, didn't learn any single strategy. So what all Tony got us to do, right, was to put himself in what we call prime state by having us to move about movement. If you attended any Tony Robbins events, you will know. And it was actually pretty similar. But when he was doing the live interventions, even the coaching sessions, what I realized is that just by putting ourselves in a different state and without even teaching new information, somehow the ideas started flowing. Somehow things become a lot easier, a lot simpler. Somehow it could be a bit more strategic, right? Not without learning any new things, but just by putting ourselves in a higher state. And so there's when I realized the quote, which has been mentioning so many times, and I finally got it, right? Which was that success is 80% psychology and 20% strategy. Right, and so what I realized, especially right in today's world of where artificial intelligence is coming up, social media, online creation is coming up, right, that all the strategies and tactics, right, will soon become a lot easier, will soon become a lot more available, right, and the thing is the information portion becomes a lot easier. But right, the part that will be tougher is when we, the humans, come into play, right? Whether it's our mindsets, our emotions, right, our psychology, our limiting beliefs, and what happens is we humans tend to overcomplicate it. And so this is something that, fortunately, right, for many years, I've already spent quite a bit of time and effort and money, right, to actually work on myself. And this is what people call about be, do, have, right? Working on the being first, and then you work on doing, right, and then you have the goals that you want. And so because of me working on a lot of myself, right, because of it, not only have I built a six-figure business, right, I've actually did it while being happy, right, while enjoying myself, and looking forward to waking up each day. And this happens, right, even when I coach my clients as well. Sometimes it's not just about new tactics, new strategies, but really, right, about just working on the inside. And that is what unlocked, right, their potential to building a multiple six-figure business and income also. So while today, right, I'm going to share some pretty vulnerable stuff, right, with you today. Things I might not have shared publicly ever before, right. Today I'll share with you, number one, right, exactly the different kinds of limiting beliefs, the different fears I struggled with internally ever since starting my own business. Number two, right, I'll share with you what I did to overcome them. Right. Number three, my lessons learned from all these experiences. And last thing, the exact 5 steps I would take right now every single time I experience a negative belief or emotion, right, and how you can immediately apply it to your life, your business, your career as well. So with that, let's get started. Fear number one, right? So when I first started posting on social media, right, I had a lot of fear of judgment, right? Obviously, right, because it's Singapore, right, people tend to be a bit more skeptical, right? And at a point of time where I was actually in the business school, most people, right, my peers, my friends, were joining just typical 9 to 5 corporate jobs, and most of them never even thought about or even considered starting a business. So when I started posting a little bit of social media, even as my 9 to 5 job, a lot of people will really start thinking about, like, what is Mark doing, right? They were thinking that it was a little bit weird. They'll be wondering, like, why do you do this in the first place, right? And I knew for sure after talking to even other my closer friends that other people, right, were actually kind of speaking my back, thinking that, oh, now I'm after the money, right? Or now I'm just thinking about trying to get people's cash, right, for myself. And I think that triggered a lot of anxiety, self-doubt, right? Me questioning what am I doing all this for, right? Me being afraid of getting rejected by my friends, being judged by them, and I always had nagging fear. And it was only after about, I think, 6 months, right? Yes, I did it. I was still posting every now and then, even though with those fears in my mind. I didn't really go all out. But it's only when someone, stranger, which I never knew, started thanking me through Facebook Messenger. I still remember there was a message, right? Where he just simply thanked me for me continuing to share my story, my suggestions, my insights. It was a random message, a pretty long paragraph message, and thinking about how my messages has helped shape his life to be more positive, to be more hopeful, and to just share with me, hey, right, life can be better than what I see doing right now. And what happened was that message really stuck by me. It was the first time I ever got a gratitude message. And it was what gave me the fire to just keep going. I got a lot more messages, right, in the months, in the years following after that, where people would randomly email me or message me or just drop me a DM, right, in different platforms. And it was those messages, right, that always remind me, what am I doing this for? At the same time, what I realized later on to my business entrepreneur strategy, when I did quit my job, a lot of the people that bought from me were people that have been consuming my content for a long time, and they benefited a lot from it. And some of them, ironically, they didn't even like or engage my content. They were just what I call silent readers. And so I think this coupled with the fact that I get all this gratitude and thank you messages, it really reminded me that the reason why I was posting content, right, is to help other people. Even if people don't buy from me or they don't purchase my programs, my services, right, but just by knowing that people benefited, I realized that my focus, when it was on other people, the fear stops. When I focus on the impact, the help, the value I can bring to other people, right, I stopped thinking about myself, right, and I started thinking about other people. And of course, it allowed me to grow my business. But I think the bigger question that helped me out there was I willing to pay the price of being judged on social media so that I can actually fulfill my life's mission to help more people, right, to live better, more fulfilling, more richer lives? And when the answer was yes, I realized that I had the choice to do it despite, right, the fear, the judgment. Because one thing I realized is that I will always get judged. I will always get fear. Every time anyone who actually wants to do something on social media, to post, to add value, would be judged one way or another. By me realizing that I was doing it to help other people to fulfill a higher purpose, that is when the fear, the conversation about self-doubt, fears about getting judged by others started becoming smaller, because I knew what I was doing this for. So the lesson over here is, right, whether you're fearful of whether posting on social media, going for networking events, going for a call, right, always ask yourself, what are you doing this for? Right? And when you do it, right, that is when, right, you are able to allow yourself to do the things that you might be a bit afraid of. Fear number 2, the fear of uncertainty, right, before quitting my job. So my previous video, right, I'll take it somewhere above here. Even though mentally or logically I knew that it was the great time for me to quit my job, right, I was still facing quite a bit of doubts and uncertainty, right, and not so sure whether it was, should I really take the leap of faith? And so what happened was, I had a lot of sleepless nights. I was still not so sure what to do, even talking to my girlfriend, now wife, at the point of time. And that was when I finally decided to ask someone I looked up to for a long time, right, who's currently still my mentor. Interestingly, in that conversation, in just 5 minutes, right, I had extreme clarity, right, about what I needed to do at the point of time. So in just 5 minutes, right, I'll just share with you the 3 exact questions. It was for my context, right? So my context is that I was in a company, right, that was actually helping to promote other people's products and services, right, investment programs, right, and whatnot. And I was the digital marketer for it, and we helped like hundreds and thousands of people, right, through our content, right, and promoting products and services. And in 5 minutes, right, he asked me 3 questions. Number 1, right, did I want to do digital marketing for the rest of my life? Number 2, right, did I want to be always the right-hand man, right, or do I want to lead my own movement and do my own thing? And number 3, right, is did I want to be in a Christian-based company? At that point of time, it was a Christian-based company. I was the only, like, out of the 4, right, main people, right, I was the only non-Christian over there, right? Again, nothing wrong with Christians, right? It's just a question that my mentor asked me. And I realized when the answer was no to each of them, right, I was like, wow, like, I had no other answer but to actually do it. And that helped me a lot in terms of getting a clarity and realizing that I can either choose to be there for a long time, or I can actually make a move towards where I wanted to go. Because me staying there, unfortunately, did not serve its benefits for me anymore, and I had to then make the choice to move, right? And yes, I was still afraid, right? But when the facts were right in front of my face, I knew that I could not stand there. I could not be there, right, any longer. So the lesson learned here, right, is sometimes all you need to talk to someone, right? Get help, get support, right? Get someone to run through the ideas with you, because chances are, if you keep thinking and reflecting on your own, right? Because we are all humans, we are all emotional creatures. We tend to second guess ourselves, right? We tend to procrastinate, we tend to have self-doubt. It's harder for us to make the decision. So in that case, right, in terms of having that fear of uncertainty, right, having that level of support or feedback from someone else really helped me to overcome that struggle, right? My next fear, right, is what I call the fear of selling, right? So when I first started my business, right, I was of course expected, by being the only founder, right, to sell my programs and services, right? And what I was expected, right, or what I was taught to do is to sell what we call high ticket product services, right, where our product services would cost a couple of $1,000s, right? One sale, right, would have been my monthly income, right? Previously my 9-to-5 job. And that is when I started to use what I learned, right, about a couple of years back, when I was actually in the sales company for a couple of months before I went to university, right, where I was actually approaching, right, people on the streets, right, to raise funds, right, for charity. Is that because you're on the streets and you're in Singapore, right, which is not the most easiest place, right, to get people to listen and to trust you, right? My sales coach, right, taught me something very powerful that I still take to heart today, which is to always judge ourselves, right, not by results, but on how consistent our effort is. Right, and so what happened is she knew, right, that when I got onto sales and selling on the streets at my first day, right, I was not going to get lots of people to listen to me, right? People will reject me, but it was a certain setting and strategy, and you had to get better over time. So one thing she said, right, is do not judge yourself based on the results you got in terms of people maybe saying yes to you, buying from you, right, but in terms of how many people I approached. And so that was what I started to focus on. Right? And what happened was, the more I focused on just the small things, right, which is the number of people I approached every single hour, right, every single day, right, I was consistent and I built momentum. Right, I built momentum, right, to be able to get to the people I wanted, right, and eventually, yes, I did do pretty well for myself in those 8 months, right. I was a team leader leading a team of 3 and 4, about 4 people, right, at that point of time, right. But then I brought it, right, over to my business right now, which was, how do I create that consistency? Right? How do I create the effort, right, such that it brings the momentum, right, to get started? So it all started with what I say, right, is started with just what I call stupid to say no offer, right, by creating something so foolish for people to say no to, and then, right, I will build my way up over there towards my couple of thousands of dollars. So my first ever coaching product and service I promoted or I sold was simply $100. It was a no-brainer, and I told the person, hey, by the way, if after the call you think that it was not worth it, I will just give you back the money. But by getting those mini yeses over and over and over again, right, I built momentum, right, to be able to charge a couple of thousands of dollars, right, close to 5 figures with just one sale right now. But it would have never happened if I first didn't focus on consistency and momentum. Fear number 4, right, the fear of not being good enough. So I talked about it very briefly, right? After I started to sell a couple of thousands of dollars, right, for my programs and services, the next fear I had was really to ask myself, was I doing enough for my clients? Right? Was I good enough, right, to even serve them, right, and to create the kind of results that I wanted them to achieve? I had multiple sleepless nights for this as well. Again, I talked to my same mentor, right, and I told him about my struggles. And the big question he just simply asked me was, right, hey, is this fear coming from your own head, or was it objective data that my clients did not really enjoy, or they did not find my experience, my working with me beneficial? And so I realized that it was just in my own head. What he got me to do was to do a survey with my clients, right? And after that, right, I realized not only did a lot of them achieve the results they were looking for, they're making the progress that they wanted, a lot of them were extremely happy with my experience, and a lot of them actually gone on to renew with me for a couple of more years after. That entire experience, even right now today, every time I started to question myself, right, am I good enough, right? But what we do in our company right now is we have a quarterly survey, right, to check in with my clients to see how they are, and it doesn't have to become a fear or a concern anymore. Right? And so what I realized is that any point of time, right, your brain will probably try to sabotage you, telling you you're not good enough, maybe you should be doing more, right? Maybe you should just quit or give up, right? But the more you feed into those conversations, the more likely you feel afraid and give in to those fears, right? But in the other hand, right, by being objective, right, with data, right, by always questioning our beliefs, asking whether is it true, right? Did anyone objectively tell me, right, or give that feedback, or did any indication, right, that what I was doing wasn't beneficial for him or her, right? The more objective I was, the less these fears and limiting beliefs, right, will affect me, right, and my life. So this is something you can do as well, to be objective with a lot of the limiting beliefs and ask yourself and question, hey, is this necessarily true? And so the part 2, right, actually, of fear of not being good enough, right, it actually happened in another way, right, was actually when I was scrolling on social media, right? And because of where I came from, right, in my coaching programs, my mentorships, my masterminds, I had a lot of similar coaches, right, or people who were doing similar things to me. Maybe they were targeting a different audience, they were different age, right, they were doing different things, but they were still mostly about trainers, speakers, coaches, mentors, consultants as well. And every time I look at social media, right, even though I love learning, I love getting inspired, right, and I love connecting with lots of them, there will always be a nagging part of me because I will always look at them to be more successful, right? And I always ask myself, am I good enough to be at the right level? It got so bad to a point where there were days where after I look at social media, right, I would not do any work because I was like, what am I working so hard for if I could never become good like them? And I think it was only one day, right, when I really felt frustrated for me to always feel that way. And somewhere in my head, right, I asked myself this question: so what if I'm not better than them, right? So what, right, if they're better than me, right? Because even if they are better than me, right, does it mean that I wish to live exactly like them? And I realized that, hey, my answer is no, right? Because a lot of them were working till the wee hours of the night. They were waking up at 4 a.m., 5 in the morning, right, hustling all the way, right? But for me, I realized that, hey, I might not want to live that kind of life. And so even objectively in terms of revenue or income, they might be doing better. I might not want to live that way in terms of my income. And what I guess is the big lesson over here is, besides the first lesson, which is something I always remind myself, is that comparison is always the thief of joy. Right? If you always compare, right, and comparing makes you feel bad, sad, why compare? On the other hand, if you use comparison as a way, right, think about how can I become better, how can I improve, great, continue to go for it. Right? By the point of time for me emotionally, right, I realized what really helped me to healthily compare myself, my peers, was basically because I knew what I wanted. Now that I know what I wanted, what were my goals, and I realized that other people might not do exactly what I want, or they might do better than me, but it's okay because I might not want to live the life like that. So now I know, right, for example, a lot of my friends, right, and a lot of my peers, right, they want to achieve $1 million, $5 million, they want to be the top in Asia, top in the world. I realized for me, right, even after a lot of reflection, that I don't have to be the best in the world. It sounds ironic, right? I don't have to be the one crushing it and winning all the competition. What I'm actually happy doing, right, is if I make about $50,000 per month, right, working clients I love, and traveling wherever I wanted, right, enjoy my time, my family and friends, doing good work for the clients I work with, and them being happy with me, the results I can bring them, right? Hey, I don't have to be most famous or most successful in the world, but to me, that is success for me. And I realized when I grounded myself about what I wanted, the fear of unhealthily comparing myself with friends and peers, right, wasn't there anymore, right? So I think the big question is, when you compare with other people, right, or you always feel you're not good enough than other people, number one, right, ask yourself, right, so what if you're not better than them, right? Life goes on, do what you want, right? I think number two, right, one thing really that helped me was, ask yourself, right, is whatever the person achieving, right, exactly the kind of life you want to live? Because you cannot just copy the good things, right? You copy everything, the wholesale. And when you understand that, you realize when you compare, right, you can come from a more healthy space in terms of growth and improvement, rather than a space of self-anxiety, or whether like am I, or self-questioning, right, or beating ourselves up for it. Next fear, right? The fear of failure, right? Not quitting business when things were going down. Right, so in previous videos, I did share a little bit about how at first my company grew and skyrocketed quite a lot, right? But it actually went a little bit more stagnant, right? Because I was focusing on other areas that was not revenue generating. My company was stagnating for quite a while, right? I had many sleepless nights, right? And I was afraid, right, that I would fail. There was one time I started to ask myself, right, actually, if I failed, right, what's the worst that can happen, right? I would go back to a job, right? I would earn 9 to 5, and life would be normal, right? I can still enjoy my life because I'm in Singapore and I'm grateful to be that way. That fear, that constant nagging, right, was still always in me. I started reflecting a lot, right? One night I started jotting down exactly why was I still afraid, knowing that my worst case scenario, right, was simply going back to a full-time job. And that is when I realized that my biggest fear was not me even having to go back to relying on a simple job, right, and just having a low income for myself. But what I was afraid of was letting down the people who mean the most to me, right? In this case, my wife. And what I realized is I was afraid that if I failed, I could not, right, provide the kind of life I desired for my wife in the first place. So I talked to her with a lot of courage and a bit of nervousness, right? I talked to her about my fears, my concerns, what if the company doesn't fail or doesn't work out, right? I'm afraid that I will be able to let you down. And to her, she was like dude, like I'm supporting you 100%. Right? And even right now I'm talking about it, I still feel emotional, right? Because even if today, if not for the support, right, and the belief, right, that my wife and me, that, hey, regardless I failed or not, she will always be there behind me, I would not be able to do what I am doing today. And even right now, sometimes I believe that I might not deserve, right, that level of love and support and belief, right? But I'm learning to embrace it right now. And so while yes, we did discuss about more tactical things like maybe having a bit of emergency savings, right, and giving myself a 2-year timeline to grow what I want, she definitely supported me in this entire journey, right? And I realized the lesson over here, right, is twofold, right? Number one is every time you're still always afraid, right, always understand what's the root issue of the worst case scenario, right? Like, don't just think about the situation itself, but ask yourself, like, what about that scenario is scary, right, for you? And that requires a lot of reflection, a lot of self-truth and honesty and reflection. Sometimes talking to people helps. But I think number two, right, is if you are afraid that you actually let down some people in your life, maybe your family, your loved ones, your siblings, right, have a chat with them. And who knows, right? On one hand, they might realize that, hey, whatever happens, I'll support you. On the other hand, they might be like, yeah, right, I would always be there, right, to support you if you're struggling with it. Yes, I know some people might be saying, what happens if they don't believe in me? What happens if they want to chide me to going back? Then I guess the bigger question, right, fortunately, is I didn't have that struggle. But what I've learned from many mentors, clients, right, and coaching lots of people, right, I realize at the end of the day is they just have to realize that their loved ones have to respect, right, their decision, but they might not agree with it. And for me, right, I think I was extremely grateful to have my wife to support me, and that addressed a lot of my underlying anxieties and self-doubt. That's allowed me to keep going and moving forward. The next lesson was, I think was my biggest ones, right, which was the fear, right, that I will never make, right, $1 million. Right, and I know $1 million is just an arbitrary number, right, that someone said, right, years, decades ago, right. But the story was basically I was attending a private mastermind event at Shangri-La Hotel, right, and I paid $30,000 in a mastermind. So the people there were obviously making quite a bit of good money, right. People making multiple 6 to 7 to 8 figures, right. And something happened, right, very casually that most people probably didn't think much of, but it hit me quite a lot. And so what happened was the mentor, right, was there speaking about how he believed in a lot of us that will make the money we're looking for. And he just casually mentioned, like, yeah, I believe that many of you would make $1 million or even more, right? You, right, here, XXXYY, and Mark. And when he said my name, right, instantly, right, my belief was like, yeah, right, nah, right, I like, why me, right? I wouldn't be able to generate $1 million for my business ever, right? And I caught myself for it, which was like, why would I question myself when other people would believe in me? And this is one of my biggest lessons I learned, because right, shortly after that, I actually invested 5 figures, right, to one of the Asia's top NLP coaches, right, and mentors, someone who generated 8 figures himself, right, to actually learn this lesson. There's a bit of NLP, right, neuro-linguistic programming. He got me to close my eyes and to just ask, just for me to picture my belief, right, and giving a visual image of how it looked like. And what I pictured was that it was something that was very bright, very exciting, right, very loud, right. And he got me to actually pair that belief with something that I knew that was a fact of life, without question. So in that case, right, so I was pairing 2 pictures. So the first picture was me being excited, making the money I want, being excited, being enjoyable, right. And the other picture I put in my head was was basically this line, which was we need to drink water to survive in our life, right. And when he asked me to describe the energy of that belief, I realized that it was a lot more calm down, it was a lot more casual, it was a lot more matter of fact. And then with the NLP technique that he taught me, right, he got me to realize that the belief I had about me making $1 million, right, only worked when I was having high energy, was feeling very motivated, very driven, and it was probably because I learned a lot from Tony Robbins, right. But the problem is, while I have very strong beliefs when I was in a very high state, right, the issue is what happened if I was in a low energy state, right? Then I wouldn't believe in that. So by using the NLP technique, I got to internalize it, right, in just that 10-15 minutes exercise. I got to internalize my belief as something that was a matter of fact. That's something that I did not need a lot of high energy to believe, right? That it was just like, yeah, I will eventually make $1 million. It's just a matter of when, right? And with that one exercise alone, right, I never struggled with believing that I could make $1 million. And I know for sure right now, whether I want to make $50,000 per month or eventually achieve $1 million, I know that is eventually for me to get there, right? And so the big lesson learned over here, right, is understanding that sometimes your beliefs, right, doesn't have to come from a space of shouting out, right, going crazy, right, going high all the time and jumping up and down, even though that is useful, right? But realizing that sometimes beliefs just come from a space of centeredness and groundedness. right? And so this is one of the biggest lessons I learned, and I hope you got some benefit out of it too. With that, so my final lesson, right, is what would I do, right, every time I'm facing a negative belief or limiting self-doubts or anxiety. Every single time, right, I will use these 5 steps, right, to help me to address and overcome it, right, once and for all. So the step number 1, right, is whenever I'm feeling it, right, I will first acknowledge and remind myself that it is a very normal thing in my journey. Right, and even then, right, what I would acknowledge in my own mind, right, is that the emotion or the belief, right, is there to serve me for a higher purpose. Right, so what do I mean, right, that whenever I'm feeling self-doubt or anxiety, right, or struggle, right, or a little bit of limiting belief, right, my mind is not there to sabotage me for no good reason. My emotions are there, right, to help me to serve a higher purpose. So I'll start questioning myself, like, hey, right, why is this belief helping me to in my life? So for example, let's say self-doubt, right, whether will I really be able to succeed, right? What I do is, after a while, I'm like, what higher purpose, right, would self-doubt serve me in my life right now, right? Could it be to make sure that I don't stay arrogant? Could it be to make sure that I stay humble? Could it be to make sure to protect me, right, to make sure that I don't go crazy? And what I do is I actually acknowledge and thank myself, right, for that feeling and emotion. And because what I realize is a lot of people try to press down their limiting beliefs, their limiting emotions, right? And the problem is, the more you try to limit it without acknowledging it, it becomes like a small child, right? It becomes like a small child, right? And it gets louder and louder and louder the less you try to acknowledge it. So by acknowledging and actually thanking, right, myself for having that emotion, I actually let myself, right, to be a bit more grounded, a bit more mindful, a bit more centered. So that's step number 1, right, to give myself a better space. And then number 2, right, then I'll start coming from a space of curiosity. What exactly, right, am I worried about? Right? What is my worst case scenario? Right? What is the specific concern or struggle, right, that I do not want to happen? And so by writing it down, what's my worst case scenario? What exactly am I afraid about? Was there any data or thing that told me, right, that something bad will happen, right? I started getting clearer about it, right? So that's step number 2, because again, right, as I shared my previous videos, right, if your brain, right, is not clear about something, it tends to go to the worst case scenario, right? And then step number 3, right, then I'll start asking myself, right, is my belief necessarily true? So for example, right, in my case, right, of me being afraid that if I do fail my business, right, my relationships will be tarnished, right, I will let down my wife, right. The thing is, I had no objective data to show me that's true, right. And it's only after I talked to my wife I realized that it does not have to, right, it doesn't have to be. So whatever the case, right, you gotta ask yourself, right, that worst case scenario or that belief, right, is it necessarily true, right, in the first place, right? Is it true that every single time I post the content that everybody would judge me, right? Is it necessarily true that I will not be good enough to achieve $1 million, right? So I start questioning myself, right? And as long as I start to poke holes on it, it gives me that realm of possibility, right? And that's what allowed me, right, to come from a space of possibilities and openness rather than a space of, shucks, I can't get it done, right? Let me not do anything instead. And then the step number 4, right, is what could be a more empowering belief instead, right? And so this was one of my favorite questions, right? Because instead of saying that I am not good enough to make $1 million, obviously, right, I can't be totally away and from reality to just suddenly from I can't make $1 million to suddenly say I can make $1 million, right? It might not work that way. Sometimes, right, the other belief, the more important belief can have is I might not know exactly what it takes to make $1 million now, but I can always learn it after. So I always start creating an empowering belief, right, to a point where, okay, I think that is logical for me, right? If I fail my business, right, I will tarnish my relationships and whatnot, right? Then the empowering belief could be, right, if I fail my business, I might disappoint my family and loved ones, but chances are they'll probably still love me and accept me for who I am. So I start to create more empowering beliefs I feel that's within the realm of possibility, right? And then, right, that's what allows me to put less power, right, into the fear, the anxiety, the self-doubt, and allows me to move forward as well. And then number 5, right, obviously, right, is then I'll start asking help. I'll start getting a bit of coaching, mentorship, feedback. Sometimes just be exchanging, right, asking questions to my wife, right, talking about some of my peers, right, even my clients as well, right? And so when I start to get help or questions, by getting that third-party objective feedback or data, right, I get to have a lot more perspectives and opinions, right, and a lot more ideas, right, about how I can move forward. And this is why I invested, right, multiple 5 figures, right, on different coaches, mentors, right, causes, right, to always upgrade my mindset and my beliefs such that I don't let them hold me back. right? And so lastly, right, and this is the bonus last step, right, is one thing I also realized is, at the end of the day, right, especially as I'm growing a journey for entrepreneurship, for business, right, the fears, the self-doubt, the anxiety, imposter syndrome, they will always be there in my life, right? Just because my body wants me to protect itself, just because I want it to survive, right? And one of my mentors actually told me one thing. He would rather his clients have imposter syndrome than to not have it. He would rather, right, his coaches, his clients when starting out, to have limiting beliefs, right, rather than not. Because why? The opposite is that you have no limiting beliefs, you have no imposter syndrome, you have no doubts, no worries, and chances are for someone like that, right, you might fall into a space of arrogance or being detached from reality, right, and just not caring about what other people say about you. So by us actually having some of this is actually a good thing, because it shows that we care. We care about our clients, we care about making sure we do something good for the world, we care about actually taking care of the people we work with, right, we actually care, right, rather than not, right, bothering, right, about the repercussions or consequences, right, another way. So I realized the power of reframing, right, some of my beliefs, right, my limiting beliefs, my self-doubt, to be a good thing, right. I think that's what really helped me, right, to overcome my fears, my self-doubts, right, to grow a multiple six-figure business. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it's a bit longer, right, than I'm used to, but I hope you guys enjoyed through hopefully my stories, my lessons. I hope you get to use that as well. Feel free to share me your comments, your takeaways, like this video if you actually enjoyed it. And I hope to share with you more strategies, right, more tactics into growing your six-figure lucrative, right, lifestyle business as well. See you.